Good morning. This is Kristen, the instructor for your course. And each week I'd like to provide you a 15-minute overview of the lecture for the week. So I'll be posting these YouTube videos for you to open up the lecture and you can review with me some of the highlights of the lecture. Let's get started. We're going to talk about Chapter 1 this week, what you eat and why. So you're enrolled in a human nutrition class, and one of the questions that I ask my students a lot is, what is nutrition? So when you look at what the Council on Food and Nutrition of the American Medical Society says, they have this nice long definition: the science of the food, the nutrients, the substance, etc., etc. What I really like to think about is that nutrients come from food. So nutrition is food. And why do we need food? Well, the number one reason is food provides us energy, and that energy is in the form of a calorie. Nutrition also provides us building blocks to build and repair. If you break an arm or if you have surgery, you need to have the building blocks to make those repairs in your body. And then obviously, for those of you who have kids, you note that they tend to grow, and a lot of that is because you feed them. So we need nutrition for vital growth and maintenance. Now, food is essential for us. So as you know, most plants, all plants for that matter, can use the sun to generate their own food. Unfortunately, we can't do that. We can't go out and just get a tan and that also gave us our calories for the day. We have to consume food. So essential meaning that we have to consume it in the diet. So I want to talk a little bit about in Chapter 1, why do we choose the foods that we do? The number one reason that most people choose the foods that they do is because of flavor. We also have early influences, so how you were raised, what you were used to eating, the types of foods that you were exposed to young. I think this is a really important one. Routines and habits. I think a lot of people get into food habits and they just eat food because the types of foods they eat because they've always done that. It's estimated that most people eat the same 50 foods over and over. In the United States, the most commonly purchased foods are milk, cereal, bottled water, soda, and bread. I thought that was kind of interesting. I also thought this was interesting, that Americans drink twice as much soda per year as water and milk combined. So one of my big mantras, and I'll try to each week kind of share a little mantra of mine, but I don't feel that you should ever drink your calories besides low-fat dairy, and occasionally, if you're over 21, moderate intake of alcohol. So that's one of the biggest things that I talk to people about. I'm not a fan of juice. I'm not a big fan of smoothies. I know some of you in class have juicers, and yes, it is a way to get fruits and vegetables in your diet, but it is much better for your body to eat those as foods rather than to drink them. So I want you to think a little bit about what influences your food choices. So every morning for breakfast I have yogurt with nuts. It's a habit that I get into, and so I think it tastes good. I think it has a good nutritional advantage, and it's a habit. So those are some examples of why I eat those foods. So think about what influences your food choices. A lot of people might say that the reason that they choose the food that they do is because they're hungry. Well, that's a good reason. So hunger is a physical, biological drive. So for example, your stomach is telling you that you're hungry. Keep in mind, appetite is something different, but I think we confuse this with hunger quite a bit. This is more of a psychological drive, your mind telling you want to eat. So for example, if you see a commercial for a food that you really enjoy, you might think that you're hungry for that food. Or if somebody comes to work with your favorite dessert, even though you're not hungry, you may want to eat that dessert. So how do we know when to stop eating? So when we start eating, our body registers the flavor of food. And that, when those hit in the salivary glands, it actually influences the stomach and the intestines to start to expand and increase the secretions. When some of those secretions happen, it signals the liver to communicate with the brain to say food is here. And then lastly, what happens is the hypothalamus of the brain actually takes some of that feedback from the liver based on the types of foods and things that you're eating to tell your body that you're full. Okay? One of the big things I think for most people is they stop when their stomach feels full. And I think that has to do with the quantity of food that we eat. Um, I think we could probably live off of eating a lot less quantity of food, but we're so used to this big feeling of fullness in our stomach, but it's really our brain that's telling us that we're full. Another note on this, fat is an important component to help with satiety. Studies have shown that meals that have a higher fat composition increase the hormones that tell the brain that it's full. So fat can be very beneficial in letting your brain know that you feel satisfied. So why are you guys studying nutrition? A lot of you are going into the health fields. And one of the big reasons that nutrition is important is that really research has shown us is that poor diet and sedentary lifestyles have really big influence on what the people in this country die of. Half of all the deaths in this country come from diseases of the heart and cancer. Okay, so heart disease is the #1 killer in this country. We're going to talk about the factors that influence that heart disease, but I'll give you a couple hints. Obesity and animal fats. All right, so what are the 6 classes of nutrients? These are the 6 things that our body has to have. We have to have carbohydrates, we have to have lipids, we need protein, we have to have vitamins, we have to have minerals, and we have to have water. These are essential nutrients, which means we must consume them in the diet. If we don't consume them, omission of those foods leads to decline. A good example of this is people who follow kind of no carb or low carb diets. Those people tend to have headaches, they feel weak, so taking out carbohydrates led to a decline in how their body's functioning. And when you add those foods back in, you restore normal function. Okay? So what do we need nutrients for? Well, carbohydrates, fat, and protein provide calories. Okay? Protein helps with growth, development, and maintenance, and vitamins and minerals and water help us regulate body processes. Let's talk a little bit about each nutrient. So carbohydrates are composed chemically of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Sometimes you'll see them abbreviated as CHO. The thing that's very important to remember about carbohydrates is that they are the main source of fuel for the body. The brain can only work off of glucose or ketones, and ketones is a very poor energy source for the brain. Carbohydrates are the best. Okay? There are simple carbohydrates and there are complex carbohydrates, and we'll learn more about those. There's also a component of carbohydrates called fiber. All carbohydrates, whether they're simple or complex, have 4 calories in every gram. Let's talk a little bit about fats. Fats have the same chemical makeup, carbons, hydrogens, but they have very little oxygen on them. And fats come in the form of triglycerides. So when you go to King Soopers and you go down the aisle to buy your olive oil or your canola oil, you're going in to buy triglycerides. Fats come in 2 forms, unsaturated and saturated. We're going to learn about the difference of those. Saturated fatty acids come from animal foods. Unsaturated fatty acids come from plant foods. All fats, whether they come from plant or animals, have 9 calories per gram. Proteins are a little bit different because proteins have both carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, but they also have nitrogen. It's the only component that has nitrogen with it. And that nitrogen is incorporated into structural material in the body. Protein is not a good source of fuel, so we don't count it as a fuel source. Its function is to build and repair. It is made up of essential and non-essential amino acids, and proteins have the exact same number of calories per gram as carbohydrates. Vitamins do not have any calories. They do not provide energy. They enable chemical reactions to happen. And there are 2 types of vitamins. There are fat-soluble and water-soluble. The thing that's important to keep in mind is that, again, vitamins yield no energy. There are no calories in vitamins. Neither are there in minerals. Keep in mind, minerals come from the periodic table of the elements. These are minerals that are found in the earth They also become part of our body. For example, calcium becomes part of our bones. There are two types of minerals, major and trace. And again, no, they do not yield any energy. Water is made H2O, so water is hydrogen and oxygen, no carbons. And water makes up the majority of our body weight. So when people lose weight, a lot of times it's water weight because about 50 to 70% of our body is water. So if you lose a little bit of your body's water weight, you can, quote, lose a lot of weight. Okay? We get water both from what we drink, but also in foods. Let's talk a little bit about phytochemicals. Phytochemicals are not essential. They're a chemical that are found in plants. Phyto meaning plant, chemical is chemical. So chemicals found in plants. So for example, a study was recently released that looked at the decreased risk of heart disease in women who ate blueberries. Well, it's been shown that blueberries have a phytochemical called anthnocyan that actually blocks the body from having inflammation, which is one of the major causes of heart disease. So by eating blueberries, you can actually lessen your risk of heart disease. So keep that in mind, and you'll hear throughout my class the importance of including fruits and vegetables into your diet. So these are some of the phytochemicals. A couple that you might have heard of. Isoflavones are the ones that are found in soybeans. Tea is very important. The resveratrol, this is the wine and the grapes. Peanuts also have them. Carotenoids like beta carotene, lycopene, those are all different carotenoids. Those are found in red, yellow fruits and vegetables. Capsaicin, that's found in chili peppers. So those are some of the phytochemicals. Again, not essential, but provide some really good components for the body. So what is a calorie? If you've already done your food for thought for the week, you may have posted something, which is great. You can post, it's a place for you to post anything. There's no right or wrong answers. You don't have to research it. It doesn't have to be long. Just post a couple of sentences. But a calorie is a measure of energy. It's actually the measure of energy in heat. Okay, so when we determine how many calories are in food, we actually burn those foods to determine the calories. Okay, so again, fats have 9 calories per gram. Alcohol also has calories, 7 calories per gram. And don't forget, if you drink alcohol, all those mixers have additional calories. Protein has calories, whether it's from plant or animal. And carbohydrates have calories, again, same number of calories, whether it's from sugar or complex carbs. Okay, so you can look at this example where you can actually do the math of all the calorie-containing components in a food to figure out how many calories are in that food. Try that with a food label next time you're eating something with a food label. So how should we balance our diet? The Food and Nutrition Board recommends 10 to 35% of our calories come from protein. I usually tell people between 25 and 30% of your calories should come from protein. Carbohydrates about 40 to 50, fat about 20 to 35. So we need to eat all these different types of foods. So I'm going to kind of skip a little bit more quickly through the last few slides. I only have a couple more minutes. How do you feel that the health of the nation is? Well, in 2001, 61% of U.S. adults were obese or overweight. By 2010, that had already risen to 68%. That's 2/3 of our population. The number one reason that people get heart disease is because of obesity, especially central adiposity, which is the fat that is around your stomach. Between 2009 and 2010, 16 states increased the number of overweight or obese adults, and none decreased it. I'm going to skip through a couple of these. I'd like for you to review in your book some of the healthy objectives for the year 2020. This is an attempt by the government to kind of set some health guidelines that we try to achieve to lessen the amount of chronic disease in our country. So some examples, there's over 600 of them, but some of the examples are eating more fruits and vegetables, lessening the amount of obesity, things like that. So here's a couple of the goals. And again, nutrition is important because it can influence a healthy lifestyle. A lot of research has shown that mild amounts of weight loss can result in reduction of many risk factors. So if somebody has 50 pounds to lose, even losing 5 pounds can make them healthier. And this is a really important concept. Discourage weight gain. Don't just focus on weight loss. And start good eating habits as kids. All right, I'm going to sign off, and you can go through the rest of those.